You said February 10, so a couple days from now.
Oh, it's not too bad.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, good for him that he's warm. All right. Anybody, there's nobody knocking on the door here up there?
Good luck, but
Okay,
we can leave that list
You
up.
just leave it open and see if
All right,
anything
yep.
shows up.
then I'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock straight up of the Appearance Commission for February 5th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Member Banks, member Shefke,
Here.
member Preston,
Here.
member. I almost said the guy. I guess it would be member Quirk, member Cluck,
Here.
Chair Rymack.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Here, I should have done this for you.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
didn't realize his name wasn't there.
made a mistake with the resignation. My apologies.
Next item is the minutes. We are unable to approve the November 13th minutes until member Quirk comes back because we only had, what, 4 of us that day.
Right.
So we'll have to postpone that again until the March meeting. March meeting. But we do have the approval of the minutes from the January 16th, 2025 meeting of the Appearance Commission. Are there any additions, corrections, or anything like that, member Clark? No, right, member Preston? Member Shefke?
No.
Member Banks? I don't think I found anything there either, so I think we're good. Okay. Yeah, okay, so why don't we just all approved? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 16, 2025?
Motion.
All approved, say yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Yes. No opposed? No. Okay, approved. That was easy. No public comments because there's nobody here. Yeah, so we'll move on to regular business. That's kind of lonely.
With that.
Hey, that's a lot.
Like watch the news. Probably.
So, Noah, why don't you, well, before we get started, what, as you're going through this section by section, I'm thinking maybe it would be easier if we have inputs, comments, changes, corrections, or anything that we read to do it section by section instead of going all the way through and coming all the way back.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly how we're gonna do it
Okay,
tonight.
cool, good.
Good
All
idea.
right.
But beautiful. All right.
Whenever you're ready.
Well, Commission, Chair Rymack, thank you for your attendance this evening to talk about the sign code update. As we introduced on January 16, this is the product of about a year's worth of work to completely reorganize and update the sign code. And what we are going to do this evening is just take kind of a comprehensive look at the sign code as staff has proposed it. So what we want to do with this presentation is just accomplish some key goals. And we want to revisit those project goals, kind of the why we're doing this, so that you can kind of look through the sign code in light of those goals. Talk about how we organize the new code. Tonight, we really want to go through sign types, kind of the regulations for specific types of sign. Spend a lot of time there. Have a break built in. And then there's procedures and reviews, the review process going forward, and then a general discussion. And then if there were members of the public, an opportunity for Q&A. The Q&A may be a bit quiet. But I believe that with the break, we may have enough content already where we may want to break this workshop into 2 parts. The first being where we talk about sign types, really kind of digest that information, and then revisit sign procedures and reviews at a later date if the commission is comfortable doing that. But we can gauge how we're feeling when we arrive at the kind of the break, the intermission built in. Beautiful. All right, well, we'll get started here. All right, so what were the kind of key project goals here? The staff memo lays out these goals, but I wanted to just revisit a couple of them with you. The first, and maybe the one that prompted this whole project to begin with, is improving the organization of the code. It's no secret that navigating the current sign code is a bit of a challenge. As an example, I've put graphics on the screen. that show you where our pole sign regulations are just in section 30, for example. And you can see that to find everything that applies to pole signs, you have to look on 4 different pages in 6 different sections. It's a challenge to navigate that. And so finding ways to streamline the code for the purpose of, again, project review, to make your lives easier, make staff's lives easier. That was a big reason for tackling this project. The second is to meet legal requirements. And I wanted to step here and just talk a little bit about a couple key areas, kind of things you should know as we look at some of these sign requirements when it comes to legality, just because anything that we do when we touch this code is informed by legal precedent that really has kind of superseded our current sign code. A lot of our sign code regulations predate a lot of these cases and how the Supreme Court and other federal courts have interpreted sign regulation. Main ones I want to call your attention to. One is Reed versus Town of Gilbert. All sign regulation must be content neutral. This is the biggest one, and one we'll probably talk about a couple times this evening. Content neutrality is the #1 most important regulation to understand around signs. We cannot regulate the messaging specifically of signs, and that's whether it's say, oh, I want religious but not political messaging. We can't do that. Or, oh, I want it to say this instead of this. The messaging of the sign itself cannot be the basis of review, and we have to be really careful with that. That also gets down into how we do different types of signs. One example, an early draft had lawn service signs versus security service. You're basing it based on what's in the sign. We can't do that. So just kind of watch for those things and remember that as we go forward, looking at this code.
I think we'll be leaning in you guys a little bit too. If
Sure.
we start to go that way to say, can't do that.
Of course.
Done in the past, we appreciate it.
Of course, this is meant just to give you kind of a 101 on, hey, here's what to kind of be thinking about when we arrive at a new sign code. Then just clear public interest. Anything we regulate, even the design, we have to be able to defend that it has a clear public interest. And what we've done in a lot of places is add standards and clarity to what that public interest is so that we can clearly articulate it. But remember that if someone were to come back and say, file a lawsuit against the village about a decision that we make, we have to have clear public interest that we can state for a regulation. And that was based on that court case in 2006. And then there's a third one that is older than our current code, but I think is important here. Anytime we regulate signs, when we say disallow signs on a certain property, there still have to be opportunities for certain types of protected speech. For an example, you can't ban all political signs from a residential property, for example, or all signage from a residential property. They have to have some form of ability to express certain types of speech, political speech, with businesses, commercial speech. There's certain types of protected speech, and we just have to be careful that we don't create situations where we don't let a business or a resident have any sort of messaging opportunity that's protected by the First Amendment. So lots of legalese, but just wanted to lay that out just because it may come up as we're talking about new types of regulations here and what we want to do with this code. Then, some other goals that I know you were introduced to on the 16th, adding new sign types, regulating new technology. Since the current code in 99 was written, tons of new types of sign technology have come out, electronic boards, changing messages, LED technology, all of this is brand new and we have to be thinking about these things. Revising regulations for multi-tenant centers was an important one that's come up just recently with, say, a case on Halsted Street regarding some multi-frontage signage that we looked at. And so we wanted to find a way to create smoother regulation of these multi-tenant centers and how signage is done within them, given the large number of multi-tenant buildings we have in the village. So something to look at. And then the rest are various other kind of details of what we wanted to achieve, creating a review process for public art, improving aesthetic control, kind of looking at sign types more specifically, clarifying the Appearance Commission's authority, overhauling sign variance procedures, clarifying what our processes are with the Appearance Commission, and then aligning with some aspirational communities that do signage really well. So those are kind of the key project goals that we're looking at. I'm going to stop here because I'll stop after each section. Do we have any questions, comments on just kind of project goals, anything we need to make sure we're touching on?
No, I don't have anything.
Awesome. Okay, so let's jump into organization. First key organizational change. We were proposing, as Angela mentioned on the 16th, to move signage regulation from section 30, part of the municipal code, on its own to the zoning ordinance. And the reason for that is one, creating putting it in the zoning ordinance allows for everything that's development related to be in one package, into one kind of cohesive ordinance. Since signage is such an important part of development, it now shares space with other development-oriented regulation. It allows us to organize signs by zoning district, which is an important thing, especially given our zoning districts are very different in the types of built environments that they create. And so it allows us to look at signage that's more contextually appropriate to different parts of the village and think about what economic needs does signage achieve in these different areas. So it lets us make that organizational change, and then it simplifies our review procedures, all our review procedures, including signs, the appearance commission's role in any development project, everything can be in kind of one set of development procedures going forward. So those are the chief reasons for changing it to the zoning ordinance. And so now it would look something a little more like this. And you have that outline, and if you've looked through the packet, you've seen it. So I won't spend too much time on this. But just you can kind of see how this is laid out going forward here. And I apologize, the font changed on these with the computer, so the chapter number got cut off on some of these, so I apologize. But you can just see that outline, and we'll follow that outline here for the rest of the presentation. So first is just on the purpose and applicability of the code. Why do we have a sign code in the first place? And again, these are the principles. This is translating some of those goals into practicable purpose statements, for lack of a better term, that allow us to look at, that should undergird any signage decision that we make. And these are pretty general, safety of motorists, contextually appropriate signage, balancing the aesthetic improvement, preserving free speech and expression, fair and transparent procedures, and then establishing property owner responsibilities. These were kind of the purpose statements that we proposed. This is definitely open for feedback from the commission. If you believe that there are areas that we should emphasize as the purpose statements for a sign code. I guess, are there any comments related to, say, the purpose statements kind of that we've laid out in the code to start?
I don't know if I have them or not, because I've got everything laid out, everything according to this order and not that order.
Okay.
So I got off the top of my head, I don't, anybody else? But I might have it in there somewhere, I just don't.
Okay.
So many comments, I don't know.
Sure. Well, bring them up at any time. So
when we get to it.
great. We can circle back to that as well. So prohibited signs, there's not a ton of change here. I've bolded some areas where things have changed or have had more specificity added to them. The things like, again, the signs on fences, signs on vehicles, the illuminated rope lights has been a conversation that we've had. The string lights, exposed lighting. This is just a list of prohibited sign types that we would like to make sure that we are not allowing in any zoning district. Again, since these are relatively these are very similar to what's in the code currently, this may not warrant a ton of discussion, but I did want this to be an opportunity to sit and workshop together. Are there prohibited signs that you would like to make sure that we make clear should not be permitted anywhere in the village? If you think there's anything missing from this list, it can
So
be.
this is 4410-3.
Yeah, it's mislabeled in the,
Page 21.
21, thank you.
yeah,
No.
it's page 21, it's
No, wait.
labeled as sign measurements and.
You say signs included illuminated tubing is prohibited. That includes neon.
That would currently prohibit neon.
Even
And is that
I'm sorry.
inside the, I'm sorry, is that like that neon signs inside the building facing out?
So that is something that I wanted to ask about as well as part of this section is right now, for those types of exposed lighting, that would include like an open sign, for example, but we may want to allow that, but we may want to workshop together. where do we want to draw that line of window signage? Because for example, in a business like Bergstein's down the street here also has illuminated, signage in the windows that is additive, that many would consider
Yeah.
additive to the business. So we want to workshop maybe how do we want to balance that while also maybe keeping out some of the tube lighting, the rope lighting, the LEDs that are, like to party in a lot of windows.
Yeah,
Keep those maybe out of the code because that's come up at past, meetings related to the sign code before.
Well, I think we definitely want to allow open signs.
Mhm.
And that was one of the questions I had
Right.
too, that I think we need to
yeah, so more
discuss.
like, well, the Shell station, they've got different, inside, I know this was brought up months ago about, well, you can't regulate that, so now this will regulate that.
The problem is, we can't regulate that type. So what we want to prohibit are the signs like at the Shell station that say Kratom and vape and whatever. And there's so many of them. We don't want to prohibit the open signs or like the Bergsteins. So we have to somehow word that so that,
Mhm.
because we have to be content neutral, so we can't say open signs or
Right,
Right.
if we like the way they look, or if it doesn't say vape or, so. That's something that we need to figure out.
That's a tough one.
Yep.
What if it was
I mean,
like limited to the square footage? So obviously an open sign is limited to, it's only gonna be so big unless you get control. and
So limit the
administrative.
square footage of lighted signage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe that's the way to go, to limit
I
the
think you're
square
right.
footage, because an open sign is much smaller versus an entire window that says a word.
sure.
You also have metal channel letters, which typically you'll see the metal channel. And it'll project, the letter will project from the wall an inch or two,
Mhm.
and there'll be neon inside that letter, which provides illumination, but not directly, and those are neon.
So if it's inside of a cabinet, so if say there's,
Not a cabinet, a letter.
okay, so you're saying that it would be the tubing is recessed inside of a kind of a metal.
Imagine a metal letter, right?
Yep.
Okay, take off the back of the metal letter.
Mhm.
Mount that letter to a wall, called a
Mhm.
channel letter, put neon inside that metal box.
It's kind of like the donut shop, but they don't have neon, but they have the exposed
Right.
lights.
Yeah, but you don't actually see the light.
Yeah,
Oh, but you don't see the bulb that's
No, you
creating
do
the,
not see the bulb.
okay, so it's covered in a translucent panel of some
No, it's
sort.
covered by the metal letter. Here.
do you have an example?
Yeah,
is the lighting reflected against the wall?
Yes,
Okay, so you're, right,
Yeah.
okay, so it's just
Right.
highlighting the.
silhouette lighting
around
ostensibly,
around it. The lights.
inside the,
reflecting.
yeah,
Right.
each
okay.
letter is a metal box,
yep.
okay? Remove the back of that metal box.
Mhm.
Mount it to the wall, but not flush. Inside that metal letter, you run neon tubing, and they may use LED also now. Okay?
Okay.
Can you think of a
illumination-
business that does that?
Huh?
Can you think of a business that?
Not offhand, I'm sorry.
Here, I have a lot of sign examples in here, but let me pull up one from later in the presentation. Are you talking about something like this? Homewood Brewing Company, their canopy sign?
Yeah, but
Includes-
they have a acrylic face, don't they?
Yes, so that would mean that you don't, so you're saying without the acrylic face on the front, it is just the bulb, if you were standing on the street, you could see the bulb that's creating.
No, you
illumination.
see, they put a metal front on it.
Actually, Dave's Hot Chicken is, their signs are illuminated and it's kind of, it kind of gives it a glow around.
Yes.
the-
You're talking about backlighting then.
Backlight.
Oh, so you're talking about backlighting.
Backlighting.
Okay, so backlighting provided that the bulb itself, the thing that's creating the illumination, isn't exposed from the street, like you could see it.
Right, that's.
Then
correct.
that would be permitted right now by code.
Okay, it will be too, continuing going forward.
Um,
Oh, I see what you mean. I just looked up backlit and yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I would presume, just based on the number of backlit signs, we wouldn't want to outright prohibit them, but. Right now, it would just be if you could see the source of illumination, a bulb, a neon tube, a fluorescent light, whatever it is. That is, part of the sign, we can't, we don't wanna see the source of illumination itself. Which again would be things like a neon tube that's exposed. Right now, that would prohibit, Angela brought up a great example. The old fashioned donut sign that has exposed bulbs inside of it.
That looks great.
Which, we've
That
got a
looks
lot
really
of positive
nice.
feedback on. So
Yeah, we
we may
don't-
want to narrow language in a way
So-
that
that would be prohibited
currently as the language is proposed.
as it's proposed, but not as it is now.
Right,
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
I do
That
too,
looks
it's
good.
beautiful, we don't
What's
wanna
the logic
prohibit
of
that,
that?
yeah.
Looks old fashioned.
Not why they do, I'm asking, why is it gonna be prohibited?
Well, the part of the feedback that we got from this is to be more specific, is to be more regulatory of exposed lighting. So again, things like the rope lights, the, you know, the kind of, it's a good example.
Where was this from, the background, the feedback, who did we get that from, like? the
That
That
public?
came from
Yes.
early on when we worked with the Appearance Commission, when we first started talking about the sign code.
Rope lights, string lights.
Now.
I don't think that's any of that.
The theme or
Exposed,
the
though.
age of the building lends itself to exposed light fixtures. So
What?
say, for example, like, the theme of the building and the age of the building also matches the point where they would have had like exposed Edison bulbs, for example, so they
Mhm.
want to use that in their signage. If it matches the era of the building or the theme of the design, does
So you
that
have a
matter?
genre inclusion.
Yeah, or like age inclusion, so if it's a building from the 1920s, can they use 1920s type lighting?
So that would be something that I think we would put more towards like our landmarking of signs, which is something we're proposing here is allowing signs to be included as something the village board can landmark. And then there's certain protections around original kind of era specific things. There's a section of code in our landmarking designations that allows for certain protections of those types of buildings that and certain exemptions, and that would probably fall under that, but it would have to go before the Appearance Commission. You're recommended for approval for landmarking by the village board, and then that object would be landmarked and would be exempted from certain requirements to meet, you know, modern code. And one of those examples could be an Edison bulb exposed in this case.
So would that, but that building itself is not a landmark.
Right,
So you're
So
thinking about.
you're talking about a
Section.
specific sign having to be landmarked.
So right now, they can do that. The term in the code in section 22 on landmarking is just objects. The village board can designate that exemption for a building, an object, and there's a third item that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But that they've never done that before, but it could in theory be done to landmark an object that's independent of, say, a building itself.
Cause I like that idea of labeling or saying or stating or however we were to do it, where we could do it. If it's era appropriate lighting, and matches. The era of the building, that's a great idea. I almost think we need to outline that, don't we? Or state that unless that village.
So that was
ordinance
more like an
specifically
exception.
Covers it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so again, as the code is written, right, just as proposed, it would be under. You'd either go through the landmarking process, or if it didn't fall under that, you could also go through something like a comprehensive sign plan, where if, let's say. You have a bunch of period specific lighting, or you want to mimic a certain period with different signs, you could, in theory, do it as comprehensive sign plan for a building. That would show how those signs would fit with everything else around it.
Boy, that's a lot of stuff for a tenant to have to do if they're coming in though. Isn't there an easier way? Maybe I'm off with that.
I have a question. Is there an ability to have like an age restriction when you're thinking about content neutral? So for example, vape.
Mhm.
In order to vape, you have to be 18 years or older, right? So for certain signage, if it doesn't fall within this age restriction, not allow it. So that kind of helps us with that content neutral piece. So you can't put vape, you can't put XXX on your windows and
Right.
things like that.
I think that's still for if we were to regulate it again by the age of who it's being marketed for, that would still fall under,
But we're not regulating, though, we're not, the exception or the caveat would be, hey, we don't mind what you put up there, but if you're putting up bait and our restriction for the community is 18 and up,
Mhm.
then if this community is facing children, you can't put that sign up.
That's our charge of the village board stuff.
I think unfortunately how that's gonna kind of work is something like, if let's say we prohibit something under a certain age, or if we prohibit a certain use in the village in a certain way. It would more fall under that, where you can't be advertising things which aren't on certain premises, so you couldn't. I don't. I still think that gets dangerously close to content neutrality, and then again, it would be more based on. How you regulate things that are on premises. If we allow something to happen in the village, we can't tell them that they can't do any signage related just to that, you know. That one specific use. We can regulate by form and accessory. And I'll talk about that with the gas station signs, for example, but if it were just a specific activity like that, we probably couldn't on the basis of content neutrality.
I have a question, going back to the landmark signs, do they have to be historic, or can it be something new that they're putting on?
So the landmark sign would be for something that would be existing, that would be already in place.
So then this wouldn't apply to like the donut, the old fashioned donuts.
Right.
So we wanna be able to put new ones up, but I think.
Yeah. Yeah, my thought would be like, if the building that the town is breaking into is from the era, say, the 1920s, that they can use 1920s era signage, even if it doesn't adhere to code.
Sure, and that would be. Something that, again, the only way you could do that as proposed would be to do like a comprehensive sign plan and demonstrate that signage as part of a larger plan.
But then
and
that
get-
wouldn't apply to a single use building, correct?
You could, it's required for in certain instances, but anybody in theory could apply. And it would be the method by which we could review signs that want to go through a specific, that want amendments from the ordinance for some purpose, some public purpose or some design purpose. And they would have to state how it meets certain standards related to the comprehensive sign plan.
So then that's probably easy, come up with a criteria. They can fill out a rubric. And then
Right.
come back.
And I'll talk about that. There's certain standards that, and it would follow kind of similar to our plan development process where. You can request modifications from zoning requirements, provided that there's certain public interest. Standards met, certain design standards, there's a list of standards related to plan developments that. And then it has to be approved again by the village, in a public setting like this.
On number one, saying signs on fences and walls not part of the building or structure, and I believe it also says something about. Not on the building somewhere, so would that cover? I'm gonna use something I had in front of my house, slow down signs on 183rd Street. Is that covered with that? Cause I have neighbors that have it, and I'm actually thinking of putting mine back out because I'm tired of the speed.
Those should probably be exempt, but I'm not sure what classification they would fall in. We don't regulate them as signs when people put that up in their yards.
I thought I was reading something in here somewhere along the line. Well, maybe in the section with political signage. Not saying the slow down underneath.
Yeah, possibly, but I'm saying the village doesn't, we don't issue sign permits for those.
Right.
You know,
They would be more like a temporary.
But they're not
allowable
prohibited.
sign. That would be different than a sign on a fence. That would be something that was more exempt. A sign on a fence would be like the case we had with the Historical Society where they put their sign for their business on their
I
front.
just saw that today. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Appropriate for the age of the house. We proved that as well years ago. Okay. All right, so.
But that's a good question.
Yep, it's a great question.
Would those signs include like job site signs? Someone's doing work on a particular property. Like I know for Flossmoor, they don't allow it you know,
Those are covered under temporary.
Mhm.
signs, I
those are on
believe.
the temporary,
Yeah,
okay.
and then there's certain construction signs that are required by village code elsewhere. And they're listed right now in our exempted sign category as well.
Okay.
And so I had a conversation with the chief building inspector about those signs.
Hmm.
And so that was how we kind of ended up with, there's at least one minimum that's part of an exempted sign category. That's in the applicability section of this whole code. And then there's also temporary sign allowances for those types of banners and things like that. So, yep.
I know Flossmoor didn't allow it years ago when I was building.
Glassware is very strict.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that was in the nineties.
right.
They wouldn't allow it.
And again,
So,
our, you know, when in the building division, there's certain signage that's required by, you know, for a job site to show who's doing what. And
Okay.
so that would be under exempt.
okay,
So,
all right.
yep. But again, great questions. Please
Mhm.
ask all the questions that you have. This is all really, really helpful feedback.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna move into the next section here, which is 441004. Which is sign measurements. So what this section is really designed to do is just start to provide a little bit more clarity on how we want to measure signs going forward. So you know, for example, if we have a wall sign, what is considered background and what is not considered background? And how would we measure a wall sign like on the left here on the screen doesn't have a background versus a sign that does? So I mean, it's relatively, that might be a little bit more of a straightforward example, but it just starts to lay out parameters for how to measure these types of signs. When we look at sign area on a monument sign, what is considered the sign area and what is on a pylon sign? And a lot of what we consider those areas is maintained from the existing code, but what we want to do is just clarify that. And then also ultimately provide graphics that match our zoning ordinance that detail how, basically show how these will be measured so that commissioners, staff, applicants all have a better understanding of how these are measured and how we're looking at measuring these signs. And so you can see that for area, for height, and I just showed you some examples, and again, it kind of misformatted with the font, but you could still see the white line showing how the height could be measured based on the text that you're seeing in the code in front of you. We look at clearance for pylon signs and awnings and canopies. And then ultimately then, which is clarify when we talk about tenant signage, tenant frontage, building frontage, lot frontage, what do these things mean when applied to, you know, different types of lots? And so then ultimately the goal is to provide graphics that look kind of like this, which you can see on your screen, which are examples pulled from our existing zoning ordinance, just showing you the style that we use in our zoning ordinance that we'd like to continue through to the sign code. We were working with the same consultant, Houseel Levine, on creating a set of sign graphics for this section once we lock in on the text of the section and answer questions related to it, that we can again use to show how we measure these different types of things.
No,
Yep.
you define on frontage measurements, lot frontage is to be measured as the length of a lot adjacent to a street or other public right of way.
Mhm.
Is that what you mean? 'Cause that's not what you're showing there. It's not the length, it's the width. It's on page 24. And it's 44-10.04C.
Under frontage measurements, you're saying under 04C?
That's correct.
Lot frontage is to be measured as the length of a lot adjacent to a street or other public right of way. So the goal would be to take the length of the lot line adjacent to that public street as defined as lot frontage.
That's the definition you want.
Is that the-
That's where I'm that. You're saying. Okay,
I'm gonna check the definition in the zoning code, because that is
That-
defined in the zoning code.
that's a little confusing to me, but
Let me see how it's. defined.
What page is that on, Jim?
Yeah, like in home building,
yeah,
a corner, building a house on a corner. The front yard, both the front and side of that house both have front yard setbacks.
Right.
They have to set, whereas the other part next to a neighbor might have like, say, 7 feet. Well,
Right.
if you got 25 feet front yard,
It sounds
then
like
the
you're
actual
saying
front of the
width.
house, and
Right.
then that other
Sounds like
corner
width.
side
He's saying the
is 25 feet.
It's
So that's probably similar.
I
I
know.
think
Right.
that might
I
be
think
what
it's
his
a lot.
question
I think it's just, if you have if you have a lot that's this wide, just the length of that lot line along the public street, you're taking as the length, the total lot frontage that you have.
Right.
I mean, we can workshop the language of exactly how to state that,
Right.
but
Yeah, there's language of it in the code, in the
But when-
zoning
If
code,
you're going down the
defined,
street.
that we can
how
work
wide
with
is
that
it?
a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
defining.
That's the front. No, I understand a corner, okay. But the lot.
The front lot line is the boundary, which is along an existing or dedicated street.
and that's the definition for
The
front
shortest
lot
of the
line.
lot- It's the shortest of the lot lines that abut a dedicated street is a front lot line, so we can work on that.
Right,
So
eventually.
that would just.
Because that's not a one-to-one definition comparison. It would be, because it would be. Not only, it's not necessarily just defining the front lot line, it is defining the
Doesn't that have to match? Yeah, like.
So if you're
it's
driving-
defining two different things.
If you're driving down the street, you're looking at houses or
Mhm.
buildings, that's the frontage you're looking at, right? And that would be the width of the lot.
Yeah, it's not the length usually, but.
But it's the length of
width
the
can
lot
be
line.
interchangeable, that's
Well-
why I think we need to be more
Well,
specific. in our
any
definition.
word could be interchangeable, it's the same thing, which is another question I have when you refer to, when you use the word height. And when you're looking at, let's say, a pylon, a monument sign.
Mhm.
The height of the sign, is that from the, you say from the grade to the very, very top of the plot of the sign? That's your definition, if I'm not mistaken. To me, the height of the sign could also be the size of the box. And I'm a little confused when the way you use height in there.
So the, so looking at height, so you're right that in theory, you could have, height could mean the height of the sign itself. So the, from the bottom of, say, a cabinet letter sign, of a cabinet letter to the top. However, generally, we look at those things more in terms of sign area. And we might add additional regulations related to that type of, that distance. But for the most part, when we're looking at height, we're trying to regulate how high a sign actually is on a building, if it's attached to a building, or with a freestanding sign, how tall the structure is itself.
Right.
And I think that is where in 95% of instances where we're talking about height, if not more, that's what we're talking about, is that distance.
But you're
up
using
here.
that, I'm sorry, I apologize for interrupting you.
No, go ahead.
You're using the word to mean two different things, the way I'm reading your product here.
But the only sign where we regulate that height that you're mentioning with the letters would be canopy signs, and we define that separately. In the section on canopy signs. I don't think there's any other instance in our code where we define height related to that distance from the bottom of that sign area to the top of, just say, again, a cabinet sign letter, a specific portion of a sign. Everything in the code that talks about height will be regulating the distance from grade to the top of a sign to ensure that we're keeping it within certain areas of a building.
So if you put a box sign, your typical box sign
Mhm.
on a facade of a building. The height of that sign is from the grade to the top of that sign box.
Correct.
What's the dimension of the actual sign box, Paul?
So again, generally, we're not looking at the height of that, because again, you may have signs that have vertical orientation,
Right.
horizontal orientation.
Right.
We're more concerned with sign area and placement, and that's what the regulations look at a little bit more closely.
What do we call that measurement though?
We don't define it currently,
We don't have a word for it.
just because it doesn't appear in the code except for canopy signs, and then I'd look specifically at canopy sign height.
We can call it height though, in canopy signs.
Why would it need to be defined?
We gotta look, we'll look at that.
I think it's used in there for both of them. but-
There's, I
both ways.
think, I recall reading here, like a reference on, for signs,
I live south of you, guys.
like on Halsted or something that, there could be architectural detail in, like, say, the monument,
Right.
which, that's not part of the height, sign height. It's the actual Isn't it the actual like you're saying, the box of the sign?
Well, so that's, and the goal was to break this into different categories for freestanding signs and other types of signs. And so, which is seen in other codes that we've looked at. And so for freestanding signs, you're looking at the total height of the structure, including sign area and architectural details. On signs that are
Okay.
affixed to a building, underneath it, under all other signs, which is in 44-1004B. All other signs, it's measured to the highest extent of the sign structure itself, or of the sign itself affixed to a building.
Just the sign, not the structure of it.
That would be the whole entire structure.
Oh, the entire.
It's from grade to the top of the structure for a ground mounted sign.
Okay.
Right. And on
It
a
would be the
building,
entire structure.
right, and then on a building, if you had like just channel letters, like the Stony Point sign, channel letters on a wall face, it's to the highest extent of the sign affixed to that structure.
Okay.
So it would go to the top, the highest extent of the letters of Stony Point, for example.
Okay,
So if you put a sign up on the top of the casino. The height of that sign. Is gonna be whatever 22 floors are, plus the sign.
Correct. So if we look at, let's say, a type of pedestrian oriented signage that you'll typically see is like the projecting signs. Primo Deli, which is set to open, just installed one. It's a hanging sign, you know, it hangs above the sidewalk. By regulating height, you're looking at how high can that type of sign be placed.
I understand. that.
Yep, so that's why we measure sign height that way with these other types of signs, other than the ground mounted signs.
We'll look into those
Yep.
definitions.
That's what you want to say.
Yep.
Anybody else have any input on that?
It's dead.
Well, maybe, yeah. I don't have any, personally, I don't have anything on that
Okay.
section.
And member Shefke, I do just want to clarify, I mean, it's, if there's, you know. If say the commission believes it's really important to include that definition, we definitely can. I don't want to shut down discussion on
No, you
that
didn't.
at all.
You didn't.
Okay,
You didn't.
great. Okay, and again, I want you to make sure that, I want you to know that you can just, you know, this is all good. All right, moving into non-commercial signs. So looking at this, it's something that has been an area where we, through Homewood's history, looking back into case history, we've had a number of variances just related to monument sign placement, how signage gets placed for especially multifamily properties. There's not a ton of changes for single family properties, just because there's minimal signage that you can put on a single family home aside from other types of signs that are included in the code, like political signs and things like that. So this section mostly
What
relates.
section is it? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
25.
05.
Thank you.
So looking at again, really just looking at monument signs and wall signs for multifamily properties and what types of signage we'd like to include in for those uses. And so looking at the monument signs, so just ground signs, we have for that permitted in the R3, R4 districts, and then also have a section for where we've permitted multifamily use in a non-residential district. Think, for example, you know, a B2 property getting an apartment building built within it, which is non-residential zone, residential use that we've allowed. So and you'll see there that we've allowed one monument sign for say a townhome project in an R3 district, which is our kind of townhouse district, and then R4, and then in those commercial districts, one per vehicle entrance from a collector or arterial road. And that's designed to, again, ensure visibility of those projects along especially arterials and collectors. That's one example of where that's seen is at the apartment complex over on Kedzie. I think it's the Pine Tree condominiums. They had a variance that permitted multiple entries at each entrance just to ensure that people could see where they could come and go from the project. And again, those are size restricted to a size that is about 32 square feet, I think it is, and so that just allows a moderate sized monument sign that's visible enough from the road, but not exceedingly large, again, to where it would cause impacts on residents living at that property.
And those signs look good too.
Yeah. And then for wall signs, this is just for R4, and then again, permitted multifamily non-residential districts, just allowing one wall sign that again identifies the say the name of the project itself. So think like the Hartford building, for example, might be able to put a small sign on the wall that says like Hartford building near its entrance or in a conspicuous location, so that you can just identify it's the Hartford building. It's pretty common for multifamily developments to include just some small branding like that, just to kind of set itself apart or to help identify the building better. And so that would just be the signage we would allow for residential buildings. Then looking at the civic, educational, and charitable institutions, those we really just tried to clarify some issues we've had around variances for ECM board signs in particular for, say, places of assembly, churches, schools, things like that. And so we just have a allowance of one freestanding monument sign that can be a digital board, and then identification wall signs not to exceed a certain size. And then as with our current code, those are capped at 100 square feet. So not a ton of changes there, just kind of addressing where we've had a number of variances come through with signage that would fall under the regulations that we put for those signs when we approve the variances for them. And then historical signs, just historical markers and plaques. There's not a ton to talk about there. But then just adding signage again as something you can landmark. We were discussing that a little bit earlier with the exposed lighting conversation. And it just, the code here just delineates how that would occur. And then that any proposed addition or alteration to a landmark sign would have to come back to the Appearance Commission, which is the same as for any other historically designated structure. But that is it for non-residential or non-commercial signs.
Does anybody have anything? I do.
Okay.
At the bottom of page 25, it's being called table 40, 10, 5B, and it should be probably 44, correct?
In here, page 25.
It's gonna be 44, 10, 5, 2B near the bottom of the page. And it's calling the table 40, 10, 5B.
Yes, it should be 44.
It's not a big deal, but I mean,
Yep,
somewhere
It's
down
good
the
catch.
line, it could.
absolutely.
And then. What was the other? Oh, landmark signs. Landmark signs defined as distinct signs designed to have as having unique historical value by the Board of Trustees are exempt from the standards for commercial or non-commercial single identified signage rather identified in this chapter. Is that also go for if it's exempt, that doesn't, it's not exempt from being any size, is it?
Look in here. Which section are you looking at? Just so I can
I'm
look
on
alongside with you.
page 26, so that would be C1. Historical signs, landmark sign.
Okay, so what that would be saying is that it wouldn't, that sign would not have to be required to come into conformance with with current code requirements.
So
So
it could be humongously big and it wouldn't be,
provided that the Appearance Commission recommends approval for it and the village board approves
so-
the landmark designation.
okay,
So you would be able to point out the sign is very large, doesn't work for us. Or it doesn't have historical or merit, there's standards related to that.
Right.
Just from a flow perspective, then, shouldn't the table 4410-6B probably be underneath B, where it says the civic, educational, and charitable institutes, because it's pointing out to 4410-6B. And then historical signs, which points out to 4410-11, that should just flow right underneath. See how these two tables are going underneath each other, shouldn't this table? probably be around here, since it's referring to this right
Why
here.
is it on the other page?
Yeah.
I guess it kind of makes sense, doesn't
It's formatting.
Under which section, just so I can
page
note it here?
26, so B, where it says civic, educational, and charitable institutions.
Yep.
Where it refers to the table 4410, which is on page 28. Should this table be moved to that page so that you can easily refer to it? It's just a flow.
I think it's the wrong section too.
No, so this is meant to say that the sign that is allowed has to meet the standards of that type of commercial sign. So the ECM board sign needs to meet the section, the requirements in 441006B. So it's referring to another sign type, and it's just referring to where we keep all our sign types together.
Yeah, in other words, you'd have to have it there and then also on the other page and maybe on a different page.
Okay.
In this case, it's just kind of saying, we'll refer back to this.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah,
correct?
sure. And again, there can be, when this is published, it'll link where you could click it and you would go directly to that
Oh,
section in
okay.
Unicode. But we could also put it directly there if we would like.
No, I just asked because these tables are right here that refer to this, so
And again, I think they also refer to something in that section too.
well, not this right here.
No?
No.
Oh,
If you look at this one right here is the 441006B
yeah, it's
one.
not referring to everything else.
It's referring to this right here.
Then it,
And this one right here refers to 441011. So it seems like.
oh, it seems like it should go back over there, yeah. Sounds like it should be placed.
It's just formatting. And here's 441011.
He's not seeing what you're talking about.
So 441011 would be our definition section. So
Maybe it's different on what you're seeing. You see how it's right here. It clearly calls it out.
Oh, yeah, I
That's what-
see it.
Yeah.
As defined in 441011. Yeah.
right, which would be a definition it's referring to in the definition section of the code. If we can put the definition in the,
But then that means you should put all the definitions.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think we should probably just take that out because I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
If we're saying that here, then we should say it for everything, and we don't
Yeah.
wanna do that.
okay,
Because it's just, everything's defined in the definitions. is what you're
Okay.
saying. So we
okay,
can take those
that's
two
great,
out.
yep.
That makes sense. So that's 2 and 3. C2 and C3.
Beautiful, thank you. I mean, these are really helpful for making it easy to read.
this is a lot of work that. we put in there.
It's hard to cross, I mean, it is, especially when we get down to B6, like it can be,
I start to spin.
these are good things to catch. It's good to have another 5 sets of eyes on, for sure.
You did good, with just your set, so.
Thank you.
The one that you caught on the 40, the one above it is the same.
Oh, and I missed that one.
Yeah, I saw that one. I caught it.
Yeah.
Which one?
Nice.
Just
I saw him
the
go.
one that.
Typos.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but it's there twice.
Yeah,
Just a
yeah, no,
typo, but
why we're
is
doing
it something that
one of the
all,
It's there twice.
The same.
Yeah.
40 versus 44. Yep.
Okay. I mean, is that something that, during proofreading or is it?
No, that's something that we're gonna have to correct, yes.
Okay,
Any-
I mean, is it something that you appreciate that we point out?
Yes.
Yes.
Or-
Yep,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
This is I mean, these workshops are the time to tear it apart.
Yes.
From
Yeah.
big picture concepts, like what should we make the purpose of this, all the way down to proofreading. This is helpful. So please don't, this is the
Okay.
time more than any other time to just rip, notice anything and let us know.
Noah,
Yes,
I have to give you a kudo though. On page 14, I have not seen the word aspirational in years. I mean, God bless you for pulling that one out. That's
Yeah.
a beautiful word.
SAT word.
That's a great word.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anything else in this section?
All right, then we get to the main show of the evening, which is commercial signage. So this is looking at how the vast majority of our signs in Homewood are how the regulations are laid out. And so going to 441006A, and I'm gonna start pulling up page numbers here so that I can refer to them with you.
That's actually labeled as 06 non-commercial still in the
Yeah.
code. We need to change that.
Mhm.
Just pulling up a version with the page numbers from the memo so I can more easily navigate it.
That's okay, I got it.
Thanks,
Hold on.
Andrew.
It's right here.
So what we looked to do was to, again, divide these by our non-commercial zones, so B1 through B4, M1 and M2, and then our public land districts, PL1 and PL2. And then in addition, then create a table where we can set the review requirements for specific types of signs. So permitted, appearance review required before it can be permitted. And then with one type of signs, which isn't in this section, but is kept with its accessory use standards, menu board signs that would have additional use requirements. And there's a link there that'll take you back exactly to that section. Down in and then ultimately the goal is to have this table be fully linked, where any of those links on the far right side of that table, you can press it and take you right to that section when you're looking at it online. So, but again, this can kind of give you a look at how we're kind of changing that organization. And then ultimately what this does is it lets us identify clearly what signs we should be considering taking automatically to the appearance commission as an appearance review. And we chose that for some of the larger types of signs, our freestanding signs, monument signs, ECM signs, pylon signs, gas station canopies, and then larger marquee signs or painted wall signs. These are the ones we chose to go forward to the appearance commission, but this is an important place to maybe take a pause and just kind of ask, looking at this, looking at where we are permitting or not permitting certain types of signage, and then where appearance review is required. Do you see any places where, again, you either have questions about should we have the appearance commission look at these signs automatically, or places where we permit or prohibit different types of signs?
Explain what is circle or put in red there.
Those are just the ones that have appearance review required. So those are just where we've the types of signs where appearance review is required. So if I wanted to build a pylon sign in the B4 district, a new one, I would have to bring that to the appearance commission for review, following the process that's outlined towards the back of the proposed code here.
Yeah, but awning signs and retractable awning signs are not part of our review.
So we would not automatically take those. Angela in the code as director reserves the right to elevate those to appearance review if we believe that it's necessary for a certain list of reasons. But that would be, those could still be elevated for review. They just wouldn't be automatically.
Like instructional signs, which would, my example would be the parking lot of the casino, that would be an instructional sign, correct? Or is that directional sign?
That would be an instructional sign. So there's two different types of instructional signs we look at, but if you have, say, Homewood Brewing is a great example. They have the little signs in the parking lots that show where you go. Those would be instructional signs.
Yeah, okay. Because that was brought before us. Or that was part of our discussion with the instructional signs there.
Yep. And those wall signs
Go ahead.
those wall signs we looked at would now fall under instructional signs as a type of sign. They're providing traffic control directions, or they're providing public safety information for site users. And they have, certain, what am I trying to say? I guess it's just a certain type of sign for directional purposes.
But those are limited as far as their size in different areas.
So we're fairly permissive with those signs. Wall signs, just if it's placed on a wall, has to follow the wall size requirements. If they're freestanding, they just have to be out of public right of way, out of vehicle pedestrian circulation routes. And then have I believe a size cap related to those.
Now, I don't know that I want to I need to see awning signs and retractable awning signs. Anybody else have anything about that? Awning sign?
Well, awning signs are not necessarily just the ones where you crank them up.
Right.
It's also the ones where you have a metal frame and you stretch cloth over it.
Mhm.
So,
Yes, it can be either of
Mhm.
those.
Would that then be, would we feel that that would be left up to the village to bring it to us or not, decide whether we should see it or not?
well, the thing is. The thing about the kind that the last one I spoke of. Why would you wanna look at it to see, make sure it's not. Unattractive? I don't know.
Yeah, I imagine, that, yeah, their colors aren't right. I don't. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't see, I wouldn't see a need to have to come to us unless the village felt that we needed to look at it for some reason. Projections, not projecting signs, though.
Sign that's 90 degrees to the building, right?
Right, I'll actually pull up an example, some examples here. They're on the side and I know they're a little small, but Lulubelle, Primo's downtown both have projecting signs, for example. The mahogany candle, which is next to Empanadas, also has a new one that's installed there, a little black one that sticks out from the building.
Yeah, that's got that old fashioned, I remember. We went around and around and around about the sign, projecting sign at Lassen's. That was brought before us, that was quite. There was definite disagreement on this commission about that. But that was brought before us, I don't remember why. Yeah, those are usually pretty simple, and those signs usually stick to the simple text of the name of the building or the name of the place. I don't think that we need to see that either.
Well, the code has,
But
it has to meet the code, and the code has restrictions.
Right.
Like Lassen's can't be more than 2 feet from. the
Yeah,
curb
they-
line.
Dimensions.
that's what we were talking about.
Mhm. And again, the monument signs, pylon signs, they're bigger, they have a bigger impact on the surrounding area, but also tend to have more architectural. Kind of pressures put on them matching the building, appearance from high traffic right away, things like that, so.
But window signs, because I know several of us have had reactions to window signs that we
Mhm.
discussed here. And I don't know that we liked that they're there. We need, that might, in my opinion, might be one thing.
That you'd like to see, okay.
But what about the rest of you? How do you feel about that? That's just me. I just know, I know Brian, even though he's not here, I think I can speak for him on this. He has brought that up. I've brought that up in the past. Other commissioners that are no longer here have brought that up in the past.
Do you need a permit to get a window sign?
Yes, you have to have a permit for a window sign.
So if they put one of those little hanging LED signs in front of their window,
The problem is that people put up more window signs than get permits for.
Correct.
And chasing them down and figuring out who has too many signs is not easy and takes staff time.
right,
Mhm.
which goes to why have the rule if you're not gonna enforce it? I'm not casting aspersions, I'm just stating it.
Yeah, no, they should be enforced and they are enforced when we find them, but. There are some businesses that put them up and then
I mean,
we
it's
enforce.
like a currency exchange too.
Mm,
Oh, boy. Yeah.
mhm.
Yes,
I
there are
will-
several I can think of that are non-conforming.
There are a number in the plaza that's around the 800 block of Maple. It's where I think a
Oh, yeah.
Western Union check cashing store. I will talk about that building at length, when we get to comprehensive sign plans.
Very distracting.
But, yeah, anything that has a P still requires a building permit, as we were talking about with window signs.
But do we want that for us? I would think, that's my opinion, I would think yes, but it's. I'm one voice.
I mean, I don't want to be on that one.
Okay. What do you guys think? What do you?
We had quite a bit of discussion about that past, the location of their location and their other signs. Right here on Halsted and 172nd.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. I don't know. What do you think, Mr. Clark?
I'm kind of lost on it. I mean, as far as the yeah, I need better description of what the window signs are, painted on the windows or just hanging in the window?
No.
I'll try to pull up some examples and
There's your
Wish I could
favorite
zoom in a little
shopping
bit
strip.
more. But the example would be, say on the jerk chicken shop here, these banners across the top here, these green and yellow banners.
Mhm.
Are window signs, they're like a vinyl cling that goes in and is adhered to the window.
Okay.
McDermott Law Group also has a number of them on their door and on their windows. And they're seen there, those are a little bit more like a. Kind of a, look almost like a frosted graphic in a way, they're like a slightly translucent white. And they're on the, and again, they're affixed directly to the window surface.
Mhm.
So those are kind of some of the examples of what we're talking about. Some
Another
businesses
example.
cover the entire window.
Yeah.
I think we had a discussion about one company wanting to fill their entire window with graphics. And we were like, wait a minute, that's a safety hazard.
Mhm.
Okay,
So we kind of weighed in on that.
right, well, that was on the copper stove.
Not even just
No.
copper, no, it was,
Oh, this is-
it was smoke tobacco, or they sell like clothing
Smoke
and
shop.
smoke shop or something like that, yes.
Yeah, they had originally proposed that,
Yeah,
And we
did have
were-
some input on there.
Yeah,
and that went before design review because, or before parents review because it was a completely new.
So maybe if these companies know, or these people who come in here know that it has to be reviewed. Before the parents commission, they won't put so much in there. Or they'll think twice about adding things to their window that make it look ridiculous.
You didn't hear what Angela just said a little while ago about how they, after it's been approved,
I
a
know
little bit
how
more,
they-
a little bit more.
I know, and so. Yeah, and that's the
Hmm.
problem, then trying to go around and policing that is very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem is that they don't ask, you know,
Do
so
it.
they don't know one way or another.
it's,
And, you know, we find them and we bring them in and make them comply or
right,
report, but
So one of the things that President Hopewell brought up and that we have been pushing is more compliance with
yes.
codes, ordinances and laws. Because, and that's, you know, that's been my push for
I know.
years.
Mhm.
That they just ignore it and get away with it, and this might be one area where maybe we.
Well, I would recommend you do what
Sure.
I do, and anytime you see something not in
Mhm.
compliance, send a message to our building division. I do it all the time. I'll be on Halsted and I'll take pictures and I'll send it on.
Yep.
Because they don't always see everything, especially at
Yeah.
night. There's not staff around at night. I see lights out all the time. I see
Right.
half lit. It drives me crazy. So tell me
Does anything happen?
or tell Noah and we will tell the building division.
But does anything happen after you send it? to-
Yes,
Yep.
they send them a letter, they go through the process,
Excuse me.
yes, it does. It takes some time, so you don't see it immediately, but it
Yeah.
does start a process of code enforcement.
It is-
I'm just curious, what happens when they don't conform, when they don't take it down, when they don't?
They go to,
They go to
so
court here?
there's different levels. They do go to court here, depending on who the judge is or what the judge says, they have to change it or, yeah. Eventually, they have to take it
But
down
it
and comply.
inconveniences the owner, anyway, they have to be here, so they,
Yes,
It's probably like the tinted windows on cars.
yeah.
Mhm.
Judge says it. Just-
Window signs are also the trickiest to see. I mean, it's not like a cabinet letter sign on a wall where it's lit up clear as day. You know, these are sometimes very snuck into windows and
Yeah.
under overhangs and things, and it can be tough to.
I think it happens a lot in those little plazas on Halsted.
Mhm.
There's so many signs in those windows and they're non-compliant. I know they're not. That's
Right.
just,
Would it do any good for us to give them the message by having to come here first? Is that just a waste of time ultimately?
the thing is, like I said, they're not asking, they're not,
Yeah.
Just doing it.
so.
The ones who are coming forward are generally not our problem signs in terms of design. And to talk about window signs really quickly while we're here, I know that we're skipping ahead with the window sign, but. Looking at, we didn't really change it. Right now, the requirement is just on a given facade of a building. 25% of the transparent area,
I read that.
you know, has to be cut.
That I got.
Right, is the max area that can be covered. Of course, many businesses slowly sneak on more. But what we do here is we also wanted to say 50% of any individual window, because right now. I could take this window in my business, if I had 4 of them, and just cover 100% of that, and I would still comply with the code. Member Preston mentioned the public safety issue with that. which is, you know, something that, you know, obviously our chiefs have also,
Mhm.
you know, would like to avoid having that full coverage, so. We just wrote that in as well, so,
I put a smiley face in that section when I read it.
oh.
Because I've been asking for that for years, so.
Yes.
It's again, maybe doesn't solve the problem of should it go to a appearance review or not, but it is another form standard that helps clarify. If we see a 100% covered window, now we can point at it and say that's not compliant
Yeah.
right away.
All right, so, but at your discretion, I guess, bring it to us.
Okay. Great,
We'll look into it. We'll think about it and talk it over and make a recommendation at the next.
beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk wall signs here. Probably our most common type of exterior signage. These are signs mounted directly again to the faces of buildings. I've put some examples on your screen, Stony Point, TJ Maxx and their sizes. This would change to be now one wall sign per tenant by right. You would have in our B1 and B2 districts, 1 square foot of wall sign area for every linear foot. To up to 60 square feet. And I provided an example of a 60 square foot sign with the Stony Point Grill sign. And then for the 1.5 square feet per 1 linear foot for up to 300 square feet for the B3 and B4 and M districts, much larger signs. And I put up an example of a 300 square foot sign. Our TJ Maxx sign, if you go up to it, is very large. And so again, what this does is right now our code regulates signage as one area or one ratio for all signs on a building. It's 1 to 2.5. So you have for every foot of linear frontage, you get 2.5 square feet of signage. So this starts to look at individual sign types because we want to look at the kind of more the scale of individual sign types. They work a little bit differently. So this brings these more in line with what you see in a lot of other communities, and I'm happy to provide that data. That shows places like some of the places we looked at are like Naperville, Elmhurst, Wheaton, other suburbs, especially suburbs of just kind of a similar transit oriented, have traditional downtowns, things like that. These are kinds of the kinds of ratios you're generally seeing in those communities, that 1 to 1.5. And I actually went and looked at signage around the village, recently approved wall signs. Just to look at whether our ratios would actually work. And you can see overwhelmingly our downtown signage is under 1 per square foot of 1 square foot per 1 foot of tenant frontage. And then almost all of our signage is under 1.5. And if you look above that 1.5 line, which is up more into the top area, top triangle, and then in the white area, I've included some signs that fall in that area. Essence Salon Suites is one of them. The salon, some of the B3 center signs, like the Cherry Creek Plaza signs, they're pretty big for their tenant frontage. Where if you were to break those out into an individual building, they would be gigantic on the building. And then Ollie's is a very large one, but also that's just looking at the frontage of Ollie's. And the reality is as proposed, these would look at it probably would go into a comprehensive sign plan where we would probably look at a unique case like this in our B3 district because the Brunswick zone is unlike anything else in our B3 and say this is, you know, this works well in its context.
No, I like this. I like the
But-
way you broke that out.
Yeah, you can see that, you know, again, of the signs that have been approved in the last year or two, just from in our SmartGov records, which I think started in late 2022. Everything kind of sits inside that, inside the ratios that we created.
It's helpful.
Oh, yeah. Very
Essence
good.
sign looks so.
It's gigantic relative to the tenant
Terrible.
space.
Every time I drive by there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still,
Side of it.
yeah.
So that's kind of looking at wall signs. Any of the other things just to note, for multiple frontages, like the Ridgewood is an example, the bar near the metro station, you get an additional sign for additional frontage there. So if you have, say, a tenant center that's facing all these different directions, we would point you more in that comprehensive sign plan direction where. But with this, where you just have, say, a building with multiple street frontages, you're allowed 1 per additional frontage. And then max height of 25 feet or building height.
Yeah, I like that. Anybody
Okay.
have anything?
Beautiful. Talk about projecting signs, and some of these are kind of, I'll try to go, kind of move through these quickly, because some things kind of overlap, the one per tenant. We expand the area that's allowed slightly. We go with we propose a maximum projection for the building of 5 feet. I think right now we have 3 feet. Some of these signs can benefit, this is a pretty attractive type of pedestrian signage, and a lot of communities go a little bit bigger than 6 square feet, so going up to 10 is more in line with some of the other communities we looked at. The 8-foot minimum clearance, just to nobody's hitting their heads on signs. And then the area where we wanted some feedback specifically was right now the proposal is height limited to 15 feet or the bottom of the second floor window, whichever is lower. That might be something we might want to workshop, and we can talk about that. And then again, 1 additional sign per tenant frontage. There, and there's no specific area ratio because it's limited by the projection distance. And the, I guess the 1 max square footage of 10 square feet.
Well, it has to be below the second floor window, obviously. Well, it could be between 2 windows, I suppose, depending on the place, but why would
Right.
you want to have it that high?
Is
Do
the
you know
height of
the
the
height
base
of
of
these signs?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know specifically, I can tell you standing next to them, an approximation, the Primo sign is probably about, I'm gonna guess that that's right around 8 to 9. And then the Lulu Bell sign is slightly higher, that one's
Okay.
gonna be closer to probably, I mean, if you stand there in that window, I mean, I'm standing about 2/3 of the way in that window, so probably 10 to 12 feet for that one.
I don't see why a projection sign would need to be higher than 15 feet.
No, I don't
You want
think
people
so.
to see it.
I don't think it would look right, because they're
No.
pedestrian oriented,
Yeah.
right? So if you had it way up, I think 15 feet.
I think 50
personally.
feet is generous.
what the
I'm trying
height
to
of the
picture
base,
it under the second
Yeah.
floor window.
the height of the base of the second floor window, is that like the sill of the second floor window?
Correct.
Okay. You should say sill.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah,
What if it doesn't have a sill?
and then the
What
second
if it's a
floor
window
windows,
without a
in the
sill?
event you had a sill lower than 15 feet, I
I'm
think
just
we
being
have
silly.
probably 1 or 2 buildings like that.
Oh, I got
It's
it.
just so that it's not oddly sitting
Yeah.
up.
I'm
above.
starting
makes
to wear my
sense.
pencil.
Yeah,
I think that
Okay.
makes sense.
beautiful.
I think that's
I love
generous.
these signs. They're my favorite.
Yeah, I think the more we can encourage them, the better. And the goal is
Agreed.
to allow these again is,
We were just at a business association meeting, and these signs are very important to them too, as far as visibility downtown especially.
The projection signs are very important.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, I can see why.
Mhm.
It really grabs your
And
attention.
when you're
Yeah.
driving, you can see it, you don't have to. try to
Yeah,
watch
that's
for
what I said.
pedestrians.
You can look down the street and see it when you're,
Yeah, you don't have to worry about, try to look at the sign in pedestrians
Mhm.
yep.
or murals.
And then again, it's 1 per tenant, so you could have, say, a small, a wall sign in a projecting sign, which. Some businesses do, and it's just a way to, again, kind of increase visibility while each set sign individually is size controlled.
We do have restriction. I probably read it, but I have all the stuff we're talking about. These can't be electronic signs though, right?
Correct.
Good.
I've never seen one being electric, I mean, I've seen.
Somebody
like
will
a-
get creative someday. and-
I'm sure they exist, right? Like a little TV. But no, they can't.
Right. All right, let's talk monument signs, another very common type of signage in the village. This one, appearance review is required, so with any monument sign that's proposed. For a commercial in these commercial zones or industrial zones are coming to you. 1 per lot, so moving from 1 per tenant to 1 per lot. Based on, where it's located, so for example. Buffalo Wild Wings Center has multiple businesses in it, you're still getting, but it's all on the same lot, there's 1 sign permitted by code. Variable allowable sizes, we have very small allowances that are actually in line with what we currently have in our downtown district of 20 square feet in the B1 and B. I think just the B1, no B2 zone.
Me too.
Yep. And then up to 80 square feet in our B4 and M districts. And I tried to provide some examples of sign size, just to give you some reference in each of those districts. And I think it's 40 square feet in the other districts then, like B3 in the middle there to just kind of provide intermediate size signs. Then we and this was an area where we wanted some input. There's a 5 foot height right now set for that B1 and B2 district, which is current in alignment with our current code, and then 8 feet for all their districts. So the sign that's on the screen, for example, the Buffalo Wild Wings sign, I think comes out to actually closer to like 17, 18 feet. If you take the Dollar Tree portion off the top of it, it's still, 12, 13 feet tall. That we can talk about how we feel about that type of height. Right now, that would be outside of code allowances. We would cap it at 8 feet. Which would be a little bit shorter than that, but would still be taller than you as a person standing on the street next to the street.
Was that a variance? You know,
That did not come up in my variance review,
I
so,
wonder,
but it
I
is not a new sign, but it's had many new copies put in it, but the structure
don't
itself
recall.
is not new.
I wonder how that was approved.
I also am wondering if the Dollar Tree was tacked on top. I'm wondering, but
They would have had to have a permit for it. you would-
yeah. We can look into,
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just curious.
yeah, separation requirements, so we've set a little bit more, some more parameters for. Fire code separations, but then also distance from one another, including other monument signs on other lots. That's pretty consistent with other communities, just to keep monument signs from being right next to one another on 2 different lots. Which can look pretty unsightly if that starts to pile up on, say, a Halsted Street corridor or something like that. And then just foundation design requirements, architectural matching the building, and then a landscaping buffer requirement, which would be new.
Is 5 feet in B1 and B2, which is the downtown area, and 8 feet at all other, is that standard?
So yes and no. So the 5 feet so that's just pulled from our current code. That creates, again, like the Jonathan Kane sign for his one example. It's a very small monument sign. It's about yay high. It's meant to be very pedestrian scale. I can't tell you if that one in particular is standard. It's unique for us, but we also wanted to encourage, more pedestrian oriented signage in our downtown. The 8 feet is pretty standard for monument signs from other communities.
On busy streets like Halsted though?
That depends. Some communities allow them bigger, some don't. For monument signs, pole signs are a different matter. But for these ground signs, 8 feet is a pretty standard benchmark number. Some allow additional if you're near a highway, some will, it depends. One example would be, I think Tinley Park allows for monument signs to be bigger in certain areas. That are, again, say have interstate frontage, that have certain things where vehicles are moving very fast. But otherwise, others are capped at like 8 feet.
Speed limit on Halsted is 45, right?
Mhm.
45. Yeah, because I'm thinking, I wonder if 8 feet is enough for some places.
What's the Cherry Creek sign? Is that a monument sign?
That would be
Is
That's
that a
not a-
pole sign?
What sign that is?
it would be
Which
like a
sign?
pole
like a
sign, the
dual pole
big,
sign.
the giant sign.
That would be a pole sign.
That'd have to be a pole or pylon sign,
Right.
which is different. Although it does look like a giant monument. sign.
And that is very big.
Yes, it is.
Feet. I don't know, I think if that were to come to us for a variance, depending on the situation, I might be okay with like 10 feet. If a
Mhm.
place wanted, of course, if they want it to be bigger, they could always bring it to us for a variance, right?
Well, and if it has to go to Appearance Commission for review anyway, they
Yeah.
can ask for it to be.
Right.
taller, I guess.
Because I can see some situations where it's.
Yeah,
It's bound by trees in front of it or, other
Mhm.
situations where. Yeah, I could see it being higher, but I suppose going with 8 feet is fine, and then if they want to change. Okay, for my,
Yeah.
maybe depending on again.
There
depending
are
on the
options for
situation.
amending that too,
Yeah.
and we may want to maybe keep that to just limited instances where we want to look at how it fits with everything around it, and we'd want to take a closer look at it.
Yeah, anybody else?
No, in that instance, remember that huge Walmart was there, so that one really kind of got lost initially anyway, and it's on a corner, it's like in a weird area.
Good example, yeah.
So just for some other reference points to
Yeah.
get the 8 feet, the Maple Tree Hill sign is just as, I think is about, what? 6 to 7 feet, for example, the church signs we've approved, like the Faith Lutheran sign. The one that's at St. Paul's, Lutheran down the street here, those are 8-foot signs. That gives you a reference of what 8 feet.
I don't know if 8 feet's enough for Halsted then.
how tall did you say the maple tree sign is?
6 feet.
I think it's probably
That's
6 or
not-
7.
You can barely see it.
Yeah.
That one, and to be fair, the bushes aren't doing
Yeah.
that one any justice, but, yeah, if I were to stand next to it as a 6 foot tall person, it's probably just ever so slightly taller than me.
I'm not sure that 8 feet's enough on Halsted then.
Okay.
Okay, that's great
We can take
feedback.
a look at other codes and
Yep.
see, right?
Yep, absolutely. We wouldn't be the first community to do more than 8. 8's just a pretty standard number, and again, they can go wider, than what,
Yeah.
but. Again, if we're gonna allow 80 square feet, we might want something taller like the Buffalo Wild Wings sign that's tall but narrow.
Plus, we have our landscape requirements and some of that landscape may be a problem for, or be too high for sight lines of the sign.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just thinking.
Good thought.
Okay.
Thank you for the feedback.
My allergies, I'm not sick.
No, you're fine. My eyes are watering.
Setbacks for these?
Yes, yep, that is.
Okay, good. Just to make sure. I didn't see them, but I was.
Oh, wait, maybe. Let me double check, because I know for pole signs, we did put the setbacks in there, but if we.
While we're at a temporary stance here, does anybody need us to take a recess?
I wouldn't mind an opportunity to stretch my legs.
Oh, sure.
Let's, all right, let's take a
Absolutely.
5-minute recess then. Because it is 7:25.
Yeah, like a grade school. Everybody stand up, stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What I
and
used to
speak
do
from any lot lines.
Have my kids stand up and.
Your other monument signs as you go down.
Go in school, not at home.
Oh,
Go at home, yeah. Yeah, Mom doesn't have to do it, but all you have to do.
So that would be 10 feet minimum from front or interior lot.
We had. like, feedback when in
I
the
don't-
car.
Yeah, oh, if it's not on the table, it should absolutely be added to the,
It's not.
yep, it should be, great comment.
Okay.
Does anybody need water?
No, I've never noticed that. Homewood Science Centers, where did that go?
Huh?
So what? Homewood Science Center, Danny just put her down. I didn't think I-
Homewood Science Center setting up, but that's the first time I ever saw it.
Really?
Yeah.
You haven't been here after dark then, have you?
No,
You know, it's new, but it's not that new.
Yeah.
No, that's a good catch. Andy.
Yeah, I did. I caught it earlier.
Excellent.
I got some notes that we had from other meetings, but I think they haven't gotten in there yet,
Sure,
so we can just double check it.
great.
Yep, thanks. Not too many notes. I think my notes are confusing.
Your notes are usually pretty clear, so I wouldn't worry about that.
I
They're
feel
usually
like-
pretty
I feel
straightforward
like I
here.
just have notes everywhere. I've looked at it too many times.
Yeah, I don't think the Buffalo Wild Wings sign looks bad.
No,
I mean,
not at all.
I think the Dollar Tree part starts to get into the territory of like, is this getting too tall? But the Buffalo Wild Wings portion looks very nice.
I would be interested to see what other communities.
Yeah.
Allow.
Actually, I've got the research guide right there. I can just take. a
I think
peek
you
here.
do. I think you gave that to me. I have it right here, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolute maelstrom of stuff,
Yeah.
so. Look here at monument signs.
Well, the one I have goes by community and not by the sign.
We've got. Blade signs. Where's that?
How many more slides do we have until?
We go through section 10, I think it's 6 slides would be left,
Okay,
and then temporary signs will take 2 minutes to talk about,
so
hopefully.
we go through 06, 07 and then that.
Yep, and then that's where our break off is, and that was where I plan to
That'd be
pause.
good.
Yep.
We're not,
Yeah.
we have a plan. Wait.
We have, we-
I was just asking the question, where did we plan to stop tonight? It's just one more section after this, so.
We might wanna, since Ryan's gonna be back, maybe send him a quick email asking him to look at the video of this, so he's up to speed.
Hmm.
I'd send it to him, but I don't know his email address.
Yeah, looking at a video would be a good idea.
Cause if he's gonna be back at the next meeting, we're gonna pick up where we left
there we
off.
go, like Naperville has 10. I'm looking at just the ones that have major commercial corridors, because the other ones are like 6 feet, like Elmhurst and Wheaton, but they don't have major commercial corridors that.
Yeah. You look at
Require
like
larger
Bolingbrook,
signs.
that's 50 miles an hour, 45 miles
Right.
an hour there.
Yeah, like Highland Park is 6.
What
Frankfurt
about-
can go up to 13 on
Wow.
materials.
Yeah, but look at what the
I don't like
restricted
13
materials
with
they have to
whatever they
use though.
chose, but-
It has to be, you know, perfect and stone, and red brick and all that,
Right.
stuff, which would be nice and all, but doesn't.
Yeah, some of these have quite.
What's Oak Park?
Oak Park is. This is wall signs, hang on, I went backwards. Look here, Oak Park is gonna be right. Oh,
We're gonna break soon. Come back to it another day.
Oak Park,
I used to work with that also.
6 feet for ground signs in most areas, except for commercial corridor overlay districts, they allow 8 feet. Yep.
In those
They're,
days,
they have
relatively
narrow
big,
roads, so you do
free
a
They do.
similar,
6x6 cash
they
station.
have similar
Oh,
roads,
yeah.
they've got Harlem.
Mhm.
And we wanted signs.
Highland Park has one small area, I think it's around Highway
Oh,
41
first
there,
one.
where they have industrial and they go to 15 feet in that district. So it's not unheard of.
Yeah, that makes sense, I think
yeah,
it does make sense.
Yep. Yep, and that would just be in B4, you think then?
Goes, not gonna
Yeah,
happen.
Yeah,
well,
Why not?
or M1, I mean, I guess M1.
we should go look at what those signs.
Interesting
in
point,
M1
though. The bank's not there
Because
anymore.
those-
You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean, they're not big roads, but they're big properties, so
They would listen to
maybe not
you.
one.
Yeah.
No, they just.
And we also could, I mean, once
Why
they
waste
work
your
together,
Well, not
a
just-
scalable
just-
height based on, because some cities will do that too, with a scaled, like a scalable area based on lot, like lot frontage or tenant frontage.
It's not.
You can move the,
Somebody got to.
the height and size of the sign.
To me, that was kind of
Um,
indicative.
I know
at
that
the
gets a
time
little
of
harder to
Flossmoor.
administer.
We don't
but
need
that's
business
on the
because
other
we're
one.
Flossmoor. I
Are
mean,
we
remember those
keep
days?
going?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
If you're gonna-
Are we all back from break?
Yeah, I'm not done telling stories.
I did not mean to interrupt your stories.
All right, I'm gonna try to move quickly through this, just to, again, we got just a couple slides left. On sign types, but this is really the heart and soul of the code, just because it's determining what we're actually gonna see on the ground, so. Thank you for bearing with us for this one. Okay, ECM board signs. So looking at our, electronic changing message signs, it's been a topic of a lot of variances. It's where they're permitted in the B3, B4 and, the public land districts. However, they're allowed with limitations in the B1 and B2 districts where we have certain types of, we have civic and charitable institutions there. Those uses are permitted, an ECM board sign. And so that covers the variance that we run into with all of our churches downtown, for example. It would be 1 per lot, so you couldn't, have more than one changing message board per lot. The sign area would be 32 square feet in, the B1, B2, B3 and public land, and then would be 64 square feet in the B4 district. I'm gonna pull up my notes here, because I'm gonna make sure I get the manufacturing district. Oh, they're not permitted. It was 64 in the B4 district. That would be the 8-foot height again. Again, we'll want to consider if we change the height of our monument signs. What is how do we want that to affect our ECM board requirements? There's a 10-foot setback from right of way required for traffic safety purposes. We don't want changing message board signs right up against the roadway. I don't know if we want any freestanding sign right up against the roadway necessarily. But then also you'll see in the code, all of the conditions that we've required for all of our ECM boards on past variance cases, and most of those are virtually verbatim, with just some minor word tweaks to fit in a code instead of a condition. But you'll see the again, hours of operation, image duration, sign malfunctions, those types of things are all included in there. Yes.
Number 3, image display
Ah.
duration shall not exceed.
We
Didn't
talked about that.
didn't we talk about that last time, that should,
Yes,
We did.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned it when you came in.
we did talk, well, we talked about it at the last meeting
Oh,
too,
sure.
that was one of the
Steve.
changes.
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, that is one of the edits that we need to make.
Yep.
Not exceed.
All right, but,
I'm sorry, Noah, but that
Okay.
like
No,
stuck
that-
out like
we-
a sore
I
thumb.
mean-
We actually just talked about it the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did we decide it's 8? Did we decide that?
for the height,
No, the seconds, it's 8, right? But it's,
8 seconds, yes,
Yeah.
but should be a minimum of 8 seconds, not a
Mhm.
maximum, or else we are
Yeah.
getting strobe lights as the sign, so,
Yeah,
great.
we gotta catch that next time.
Okay. Any other thoughts on ECM board signs, a very controversial sign type? I'd love to hear any thoughts on.
I think you guys put in here just about everything we had talked about over the years. I didn't,
We've had so many of them now
Yeah.
that we're familiar with the.
yeah, I don't,
Regulations.
that number 3 was the only thing that I had,
caught
took any
again.
notes on.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
Great, okay, moving on to our other very controversial sign type, pylon signs. So, these are our largest types of signs we'll see around the village. Right now, we have them listed as permitted in the B3 and B4 districts. That would require appearance review, 1 per lot, but only on lots with a minimum of 100 feet of frontage for lots. So that's going to take out, a number of, say, like, Southgate properties. But things like the Ollie's site, and Halsted Street properties have frontages of greater than 100 feet. And so that's where you're going to see, pole signs be permitted. So the goal is just to say, hey, we don't want these very narrow lots to start putting up pole signs next to one another. There's got to be some separation, and it has to be a large enough lot such that, you know, it requires a pole sign. That's generally the properties where you're seeing those placed. You've got 1 square foot per 2.5 feet of frontage for a B3. So example, a 300-foot wide lot gets 120 square feet of sign area. And then 1 to 1.5 for B4. So you're going to start to see larger signs. So for example, with the lot frontage of in the high 300s for the target lot, you would get the sign that you see there, a 230 square foot sign. I think that's Park Plaza West, I think it's called. Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah. And so then also when you start to get to the very wide lot like Ollie's, Ollie's would just fit their sign that they just put up would fit just inside that requirement as well. Just to give you some context of sign area, that's in the B3 zone, so that would be permitted. So there's a size cap of 250 square feet, and then 20 feet of sign, of sign height. We can talk about if that is appropriate. I know we're just talking about height. I think it's good to revisit here as well. We'd like feedback on whether electronic displays should be permitted. Right now, they would be prohibited inside of a pole sign, but we should talk about that. And then just separation of greater than 100 feet required. Fire separations are added to code, and then the landscape buffer material requirements would also be included in that.
I will say that the electronic displays, we do have pole signs on Halsted now with electronic displays.
do.
We have the Chevrolet of Homewood, we have the Rim Place, which I know is closed, but the sign is still there.
Right.
So there are a few of them on Halsted.
The former Walmart has a pole sign that also had gas station prices that
Yeah.
would be considered an electronic display. as well.
All gas station ones with the prices are electronic.
Correct. So if a new gas station were to get built on Halsted, yeah, we could almost assuredly see a electronic display in it. Now, they could come and ask for that through, again, like a comprehensive sign plan or something like that.
We
but-
used to allow gas stations to have the electronic. They were the only signs that were allowed to have that digital.
Mhm.
I think the Shell here across from Lansing has it too.
Mhm.
The one on the Shell station, that big. Yeah.
And also the Shell station down by Jewel. Kmart.
Mhm.
And we could restrict like just vehicle related uses like gas stations could have them. We could write a restriction like that if that's all we want to see, but this is an important area because pole signs can get very large.
How high is the target sign again? The top?
That one is, I looked at this one, I'm trying to remember, it was a while ago. That's gotta be close to 25 feet. So we would be below that right now with 20 feet.
Because that sign is appropriate. I think that height is appropriate. Not bigger than that.
No, yeah, it is. That is, so it used to be by side, by district, maybe, the way that the sign. Let me see. There's a little chart in the old code.
In the old code,
We allowed a maximum height of 28 feet. If the building was 250,000 square feet or over, so that could be as high as 28 feet,
I think 25 feet is good. I don't know about 28.
25.
Anybody else?
Okay.
good.
Which,
Visibility.
no,
That's a
what's the
little-
difference between 25 and 28, that's what I'm asking.
Nice number. I like the number. When I was 25 years old, it was a good year.
All right.
All right, great.
We're okay.
28 was a better year.
uh,
Do you have opinions on the electronic displays?
Fine, I'm
I
fine
think
with
they should have
28.
electronic displays, but you probably want to limit it. So that you end up having a massive,
To only Halsted, to only B4?
no, I meant in terms of size,
Oh, the size too?
the size of the display.
Okay, we can look at that.
Yep,
And also the type of sign. We're not, I don't want electronic displays on our projecting sign in downtown Conifer Ridge.
And it could get really crowded on Holstead with a lot of
Mhm.
electronic signs up there. It could get crazy.
Well, if you limit the size though.
Yeah,
Yeah, limit the size.
yeah.
yes, definitely.
We can look at other codes and see what their allowances are for pole signs that are
Right.
electronic.
Right, yeah, these are the signs that communities tend to put the tightest belt on in terms of the design, obviously, but, it's, some communities do ECM, some don't. And I just wanted to pull these back up to show you examples. The church sign, Faith Lutheran, which is not a pole sign, but you can see kind of how we'll have to be careful with size. That's already 28 square feet of
Mm.
sign area, that is. So I mean, we'll have to be thinking about what do we want to cap this at.
Maybe
So
a
that-
percentage,
It could be a percentage, we could do that.
to me, that's more logical than trying to limit the square footage, because then you have something like this.
Maybe
Right.
see what other towns do if they do that as a
Yeah, I think we
percentage,
need
and
to
what
see
their
what
percentage
Yeah.
would be.
Their small scale.
Let's do that. Great. Okay, canopy signs, new type, so we're getting into new types of stuff.
Wait, we're done with pylon signs?
We can take a step back. I
Take a step
maybe
back,
jump-
yeah.
Jump too quickly.
Number 7, 5B7. About the landscape, shouldn't we, and this might need to be maybe in all of the landscape around signs, is that they shall be maintained. I don't think I saw anything there about the requirement for maintenance.
Okay,
Cause look around town in the summertime, you get into
Mhm,
August and they started out with good intent,
mhm,
but then nothing happens and they look terrible.
Right,
They need to be maintained. And yes, I have
point.
talked to business owners and said, hey, could you do something? Doesn't mean they're gonna do it, but maybe if the village said, hey, could you maintain, you agreed to.
right. So we can potentially add an additional landscaping note, or even more detail to our maintenance standards
Yeah.
in section 10. Where we can say clearly for monument signs, for signs requiring landscaping, here's the standard. We
That
could
would
say
be nice. I mean, cause some places just don't. Let's see. Oh, never mind. The other one's been answered already. Okay, thank you.
Getting into new types of signs, signs that we haven't kind of provided clear standards for before, and we're gonna provide. So this is for canopy signs, so the most recent example of a canopy sign installed in Homewood was the Homewood Brewing Company sign that glows along the canopy in the evenings. It would be allowing in our B districts and in M1 on these canopies, when they build a permanent canopy structure. 1 square foot of signage per 1 foot of length of the canopy structure, so think of that as like the circumference around the canopy structure. I've already noted length, there may be a better word than length for that measurement. But then, so for example, you get a 30-foot long canopy, you could go up to a 30 square foot sign. Looking at how this would be applied, take the Homewood Brewing sign, for example, the total length of that canopy on the front around all 3 sides would be 55 feet. So they could go up to 55 square feet of signage, and that sign is 45 square feet in size. So that kind of gives you an idea of the types of signs to be looking at. The height of, and this is the one point to member Shefke's comment, where height is defined differently as a letter height. That goes up to 2 feet of max height. So the Homewood Brewing Company sign, for example, is 1 foot 4 inches tall. The Levant sign is about 2 feet 3 inches. So because there's a curl on the B that comes up, but most of that sign is inside the 2 feet. So just to give you context of what that would look like in practice. And then those are really the chief requirements for the canopy signs, aside from don't project into right of way. And then at some point, it would look kind of odd to have that set too far back from the canopy's edge. So there's a limit on how far you can be set back. I believe it's 3 feet.
3 feet. I was
Because
just
after
looking at
that, the canopy structure would likely start to block visibility of the sign. I don't know if you'd ever have somebody propose one there, but it's in place there.
And canopy signs look nice. Why, I'm looking at the M1 district. Where would anybody want to put one in the M1? It's manufacturing, right?
Would disposal.
Oh,
Yeah, maybe,
manufacturing?
yeah.
Yeah, you're
I guess
right.
So, yeah.
There's one in Glenwood, that's actually the one, ironically, the one that we looked at for the materials on the building, the Morrison Materials over
They
there on
have a canopy?
194th Street. They've got an entry canopy that has a sign on it.
Okay,
So,
I guess maybe you would have an
Makes
entry
sense.
canopy for.
Yeah.
yeah,
Just
Yeah.
couldn't think of
I
anything.
have to take a look. I haven't
I
really
didn't mean.
noticed.
I think they might.
it's tough with the.
Portico, right?
I'm trying to visualize. I've gone in there to pay the bills many times. Trying to.
You can do that on the computer.
You actually go there?
I don't- Yeah. I'm driving to Menards.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk to the ladies, bring us cookies. That's all I
All
have.
right.
Thank you.
Excellent. And then here's the Homewood Brewing. You can just see that sign, what it looks like up close there, and that would be compliant with the new code. Gas station canopy signs. So this is a unique type of sign. We see them affixed to gas station canopies. These would only be permitted on canopy structures that are accessory to a vehicle related use. So this is just kind of breaking these out from, say, a wall sign requirement, just to look at them a little bit more specifically. It would require appearance review in the B1 and B2 districts, and then would be permitted elsewhere. It's just to ensure that the gas stations that are already existing in those districts, like in our B1 zone, we're not going to permit new gas stations. They're not a permitted use, but there are gas station canopies that exist. So if they want to change that, the signage would go to appearance review, for example. Then in B3, B4, you could go build one. So we're looking at 1 sign permitted per side of the canopy structure with a maximum of 4 signs, so 1 per side. An example of a compliant gas station would be the Speedway. They have 4 signs, 1 on each side. And they cover about 15% of each side. So the max that we put was 30% of each side, so not the entire side of each sign. Or of each side of the canopy is covered in signage. The height of the, I guess this is where height would come in with the canopy sign again, would be 80% of the total height of the canopy roof itself, so that you don't have letters that are protruding over or under the canopy sign. And then no canopy signs that can face residential property. So if that gas station has residential property on one side of it, you can't put another station sign, facing that property. And that's just because these canopy structures are elevated generally, and it would be visible generally from a residential property that's next door, even if you have a big privacy fence or something like that. So we just said, don't put it on that side.
And if
there's
it's
other
lit,
communities
it
that do
could
that
be
too.
annoying, yeah.
What about on the shell sign there that's higher, that's taller than the canopy?
So that wouldn't be so that wouldn't be permitted as is. There, they would have to cut that down to the size of the height of the canopy there.
And what about when there's 2 canopies on the site, like they have there? Is that, do
That
each
was
of
covered,
those,
wasn't it?
are allowed 4 signs?
So that would be, one, per,
One.
I believe one per canopy, yeah.
It's in here somewhere, isn't it? I thought I read that. One side per canopy structure, two. I don't know. I thought I read that.
Yeah, it's one per side of canopy structure,
Yeah, right here.
as,
The parentheses two means. What?
so the parentheses two looking here is placement down below in number 2. So it reads no more than one sign may be constructed for each face of a canopy structure, not to
Yeah,
exceed
okay.
4 total
I
signs.
thought I read it. So
Yeah.
thank you. Appreciate it.
So I don't believe we restrict it for multiple canopies. We certainly can. But that would be something that would, if you wish to, but currently it's not, it wouldn't be restricted.
I don't see a need to. Anybody else?
Yeah. It'd actually be a waste of 2 signs because they're just looking at each other.
Yeah.
On
Sure.
the canopies, right?
Sure.
I mean, it
True.
would be a bad.
Yeah.
Poor management move on Shell's part. Someone.
True.
whoever wanted
Waste of
to.
money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Anybody? Okay, thank you.
excellent. All right, awning signs permitted in all B districts in the M1 district. Requires appearance review in B1 and B2 districts. This is again, mostly just to look at, again, just the form and how it fits in the character of the surrounding area. 1 per awning permitted on the building. So that's 1 per awning, not just 1 awning. So if I had, for example, Prime 69 just put up awning signs on their building, they have 1 per awning, and these, those Prime 69 awnings would meet these code provisions. So that can be maybe a very recent helpful image in thinking about the awning sign requirements. Max 25% of the total surface area of the awning can be covered in signage. The examples I put up there, Knickknacks is obviously very small. And then Lavoot had about 20% of total surface area of each awning covered in signage area. Just that we were asking that it be centered on each awning structure, the sign area. It cannot be painted onto the fabric. It could be professionally printed or another way of adhering it. That's pretty rare, but has been done before. Paint and stripe, just painting directly onto that fabric surface, and
sure
it
it is.
obviously is pretty unsightly. Or even just spray painting stenciling in there, it wears very quickly. So we wanted to see that be prohibited.
Yeah.
Minimum 8 feet above grade. And it would be on first floor awnings only. Not that we have a lot of awnings that are
Well-
not on the first floor, but
No,
Just in case.
I'm just gonna look.
Right.
Anyway. I have no questions. Anybody else?
okay. Cool. Marquee signs, another new sign type. This is a unique sign type. Would be permitted with an appearance review in any of our business districts, our B districts. It would be one of these signs per building permitted. The max area would be fairly large, 150 square feet or 300 square feet in the B4. The max height of the sign right now, and we would love some feedback on this, would be 15 feet. And no max height in the B4 district. Right now, the height would be capped at the roof line otherwise. I've shown an example of a marquee from Amarillo, Texas, that is above the roof line, and we can certainly discuss that. It must be flush to the building. Those 2 examples there that are, that come up to the building line. And then 10-foot max projection out from the wall for those. And again, these are meant to be very visible signs, meant to be pretty artistic. Theaters used to put them on a lot of different buildings. Homewood used to have one with the home theater, I believe,
Yeah.
right?
Does Grady's have one?
I don't think they have a
What
marquee.
kind of sign does Grady?
It's
I
again,
know they have.
Grady's is
monument
against the wall.
sign,
Is theirs on the wall?
And then they have some wall signs, but I
That-
don't,
I know that took a lot of review.
I would love to have a nice business come in and put up a.
Is
marquee
the
sign.
Amarillo sign, is that
That'd be
flush to
great.
the building?
So the two, so this, and
I'm
maybe we
thinking
should be
about it,
clear on how we
maybe.
define it.
Yeah,
And it does parts of the sign touch, but not all of the sign. So if the full surface if we want that to be flush, like in the right example there from Milwaukee. We could do that. That would be right now kind of how one would probably interpret the current language about being flush to the building. The Amarillo one is partially flush, but not entirely.
I think it looks better when it, than being
sure.
smashed up in the
Yeah,
building.
me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
It stands out more, no pun intended, but yeah.
And 15 feet is very low
Yeah,
for a marquee sign.
yeah, I would have no problem making it bigger, certainly if they wanted a variance,
is very
depending on what it
small.
is.
That's very low, right?
Yeah. So I mean, we can,
Height
we'll
capped
have a
at the
workshop.
roof line too, it depends on what it is and what the business is.
Yeah, so we'll,
yeah.
I agree. I think the Amarillo one looks nice and it's above the
Yeah,
roof
that's
line.
great.
And it's not flush, so.
Yeah, it's not completely all the way down the sign flush to the building. It's close, but not quite, so.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know that it needs to be, we need to tell them it has to be flush, maybe it has to be within a foot or two or out maximum or something like that.
Sure,
But what do other places do?
marquee signs, I mean, a lot of communities outlaw them entirely. It's seen as a big garish sign. Some communities, again, will allow them
Depends on the
with very
business.
strict form standards. That was kind of some of what was happening here with the height and the flushness restrictions, but again, all of these would also go to appearance review already. So
Yeah.
some of these
Yeah.
things could also be determined on a case-by-case basis through the appearance review process.
Can't imagine prohibiting.
Guess it's a matter of taste. Again, it depends on the business and what they
It
want.
does,
Mhm.
right?
I'd love to get a theater that would have one.
Yeah, theater, you would need one.
Anybody else?
Beautiful.
All right,
Okay, and then just there's some miscellaneous sign types in section 10. There's three, we look at painted signs, which is something that is pretty hazy in our current code. So just setting some standards, just have to meet in terms of the size and placement, looking at wall sign regulations. There's a great example on the bottom of what this could look like with something like in Elmhurst. They allow painted signs and they can look very nice. They kind of have a very tactile, very textured look to them. Just that all we would ask is that they don't cross a wall plane. So don't wrap a painted sign, for example, around a corner or layer it on two different wall faces like this, where it would, whatever you're painting kind of moves across wall planes. The goal would be to keep it on one wall plane. And then right now we've written a restriction that wall material, it would be on non-porous surfaces. So things like stucco and brick, which would over time, which have a porous structure, you couldn't hit a painted sign on that. It would have to be on something like metal, like certain types of treated wood, things like that are non-porous.
Isn't that hot chicken, the new chicken place, painted sign?
That is, well, so that's just the paint color of the building. With something like commercial messaging like this would be a painted sign. So if they painted Dave's Hot Chicken on the side of the building, that would be what we're talking about
Oh,
for
I
painted wall
thought it was
signs.
painted, okay.
No,
They actually had some of that Dave's chicken on the backside, on the Target side, there's paint peeling off.
already?
They didn't prep it. You know what, I think it was during the real cold spell.
Mhm.
They probably went and just.
They were in a hurry and didn't do it right.
The cost.
Yeah, right,
No.
right.
Trustee Heiferman
Yeah.
mentioned some of
Code
the
enforcement.
concerns.
Yeah, you bet.
What about vinyl letters? I've seen vinyl letters a lot used on windows, even vinyl letters using on metal signs.
Fine.
So-
Vinyl letters.
Yeah, you could do that. If it was in a window, we'd treat it as a window sign. And then if it were say a piece of metal affixed to a building, we would treat that as a wall sign probably, but
Okay.
it depends on where it's
So
placed.
That is an acceptable technique now.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
So it should peel off.
Right,
Yeah.
Well, depends. Depends.
so.
So- May not cross the wall plane, so it can't wrap around the corner.
So, yeah, and an example of this would be if, it's hard to see with that picture, I should have made it bigger, but the Jefferson's, distillery or tap room, one there, but there's a wall plane change there, and it would be as if the sign moved across that wall plane, so it might say like Jeff on one wall plane, and then in the one that's set back, Efferson's is on the other wall plane, it's just keeping it on one plane.
I think
And
that's
especially
creative.
For larger plane, wall signs, they can start to kind of jog across different planes and look kind of odd.
That looks great.
Brewery.
I was thinking of that
And what-
H2,
what-
that was the
Right.
example I used when we were talking about it.
Yeah, 'cause that wraps
'Cause
around.
I think that looks
great.
nice.
Yeah, that's not painted, it's
True.
a structure.
But it would look the same if it were painted.
Yeah,
Fun fact,
So
Drake
that
and
would-
Samuel L. Jackson have backed Dave's Hot Chicken. They are investors in it.
Oh, all right.
Something though, if it looks nice, it has to go before the appearance commission.
Yep.
So there could be
Just
exceptions.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
they're,
Excuse
I
me.
mean, we can remove that if again, since it comes to the appearance commission. If it, if you feel that that'll cover those instances, you can look at them on a case by case basis. We
I'm
can-
sorry, Noah, could you repeat that?
Looking at the things like the non-porous surface of the wall planes, since these have to go to appearance review anyways, we could just treat those on a case by case basis as well.
That
Yeah.
would work.
Well, and the thing like
Yeah,
with the
because-
signage at Homewood Brewery, they've got there's the airspace to see that.
Yes, so
So, so
it
that
might look
way,
different.
if it's case by case.
Right.
If someone has a particular building that's in that position and be like, hey, this is what we'd like to
Sure.
do, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's perfect. It's
Yeah.
not a waste and then.
Could make that more discretionary.
Mhm.
We're looking at 8 o'clock.
Yep.
Should probably
Yeah,
end
are
this soon.
we,
Yep, window signs we already looked at,
Yeah.
and I just showed some examples from a recent approval. Essence Suites, and then we've actually already talked about the instructional signs, the freestanding signs and wall signs. The wall signs have size limitations, 50% of the max sign, wall sign area allowed. I put an example of the entrance sign of a Homewood Brewing on there. Freestanding signs just have minimum distancing requirements to protect pedestrian and vehicle access, so it can't just be right up against the curb, it's gotta be set back, so we don't get mirror strikes, stuff.
That got a smiley face and a star.
by which one?
Great.
I-
Freestanding signs having distancing from curb lines or from.
Do we want to stop at this point and start up at the next meeting? Are we,
It's 8 o'clock, that's 2
Done?
hours. I mean, yeah. we should
we're
probably
just,
start.
just about got there. We'll start with this next time, because that
Yeah.
might take a little more
Yep.
discussion.
Sure.
We got the premium paid for.
Good job.
Yeah, go ahead.
Twice as much, right?
Yeah, submit that to Noah.
What was this?
That means I get triple.
Yeah, the freestanding instructional signs. Anyways, again, just to wrap up, thank you so much for bearing with us for, this is a ton of material to go through, but. We're hoping this has a real lasting impact for the village, so your time is valued and so is your input. This is really helpful, so thanks so much for hanging in there till 8 o'clock.
Thank you for all the work.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys did, round of applause for all the work.
Then we want to say, when do we want to meet again? Do we want to wait until March to continue or?
Are we in a hurry to get this done? I can
We
wait.
set a
I'm
date.
fine.
No, I mean, we're,
We started it.
Well, there were dates set, but nothing's in stone.
because those Saturdays were the day from.
Let's see, yeah, was there,
the next scheduled meeting would be March 6th.
Yeah, like the
because
28th is the
there's
Planning and
nothing
Zoning
on
Commission.
The other-
For appearance,
The 20th would be the next time we could add a meeting if we wanted to, but otherwise. we
I
just
may
wait until the
not
6th.
be in town.
Okay, we can
Okay.
wait until the
Yeah, until
6th.
the
We're,
6th.
I'm fine with that.
we're already scheduled to talk about signs on the 6th, so.
What, I have the Planning and Zoning Commission on the 28th. Are we supposed to go to that or meet or something?
No, please.
I don't know.
Well, we would want to finish the workshopping and then have a hearing, or a recommendation from the appearance commission before we take the next step, so.
But that wouldn't be this February then.
No, so things will move back because of breaking this workshop into 2 parts.
That'll probably happen in April.
Yeah,
But nothing on the 28th.
No. So March meeting is the sixth.
I'm not gonna be here on Friday.
All right, so there's nobody online for public comment, right?
We don't think so.
No,
Nobody waiting, okay. So old business, anybody have any old business? You have old business. Was there something you said you wanted to talk about?
Was it now? I forgot.
Obviously, you can wait. New business, anybody have new business? I don't have any new business. All right. I will ask for a motion to adjourn at 8:05 PM. A motion,
You're making a motion?
second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, thank goodness. Okay,
So how's Brian gonna catch up with? all this?
I've asked Angela to send him an email asking him to watch the video once it's posted, so he's
Yeah.
So we don't have to
he does not
revisit it.
escape.
Yeah,
Um,
well, we're not gonna revisit everything. I shouldn't say that. We try.
Recorded.
That's
And if
okay.
you all wanna watch it, oh, you gotta turn it off.
Yes.
Internal. Is that still on, Noah?
It is.